Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Seaman, and I am the host of Get Hired Live, the show you're watching right now. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a wonderful show for you today. We're going to be talking all about job searching during these difficult times. But before that, I want to ask you to introduce yourselves in the comments. I already see so many people doing that already. I see Todd from Georgia, Huma from California. I see Nicole from Las Vegas, Marina also from Las Vegas. So keep introducing yourself in the comments. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your job search. And maybe you're looking to move into a new field. Maybe you're looking to move to a new area overall for your job search. So just keep telling us a little bit about what your job search is. And then what I want you to do is to look for each other in the comments. Maybe you find someone who wants to move into the same field as you, or they live in an area that you live in, or an area you want to move to, and connect with each other. Because some of the best notes that I get after this show is from people who say they ended up connecting with each other and they're helping each other with their job search. It's actually, if you job search in groups, it's been shown to help you get hired faster. And obviously, it's best to do a job search with other people who know what you're going through. So make sure you're making those connections. Networking is so important to a successful job search. And what better time to start than now? So keep doing that. And we have such a wonderful show for you today and a wonderful guest. This is her second time on Get Hired Live, and she is actually now a top voice for LinkedIn. So I want to bring her onto the show. Is Kamara Toffolo. So welcome so much, Kamara.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for having me
Hi.
back.
Of course, yeah. You are a resume writer. You write, work on people's LinkedIn profiles. You're a job search strategist. So I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Definitely. And we have so many people joining us on the stream. We have Rekha from Dubai. We have Hall from Atlanta. We have people joining us really from all over the world. We have Chen from Fort Worth. And let's see, we have Sonia from Colorado. So keep introducing yourself in the comments, and we're going to chat a little bit while people still do that. Kamara, one of the things that we talked about before that is basically, when it comes to people job searching, um, people get really anxious because they can't necessarily control a lot of the outcomes. They think they're going to start job searching and they'll get a lot of interviews immediately, but that doesn't happen. And maybe they try and follow a specific job search procedure or routine. So what do you want to share with people who maybe have that anxiety of, I'm not getting interviews, I'm not hearing back from people? What should they know?
Well, first of all, know that you're not alone in your experience. So many job seekers, in fact, most I would think job seekers would be experiencing some periods of doubt and anxiety as they go through the process. Job searching is hard. There's no denying that. But really, what I want job seekers to focus on is what is within their control. And there are actually a number of things that are within their control. And I think when focusing on a few different things, that it can really help alleviate a bit of that anxiety and also feel like you are more so in the driver's seat of your job search and career. So, and we can dive into a couple of those if you'd like, a couple tactics that I might recommend.
Definitely, yeah. So what tactics do you think, job seekers should be putting their efforts behind?
Yeah, so a few different things. So obviously, resume is very important. If you're not getting called for interviews, I would investigate that as at that would be the first thing I would investigate is the status of your resume. Is your resume telling the right story? Is your resume showing that you're qualified? And even before the resume writing part, I want to make sure and I want to know that job seekers are clear on what their target job is, what they're actually going after. Because once you've identified your target job, then you're able to write a resume that's targeted towards that direction, a LinkedIn profile that's targeted towards that direction, and you're going to be able to tell the right stories to position yourself and market yourself, so to speak, towards that direction. So resume would be the first thing I would look at if you're having some job search challenges. Then I would look at your LinkedIn and make sure that your LinkedIn is really telling great stories about you, unique stories about you, and also aligns in terms of the same storyline as your resume. We don't want a total copy of your resume on your LinkedIn, but we want the same facts, if that makes sense. And then from a job search strategy standpoint, we want to make sure that we're not doing one thing only, but we're doing many things simultaneously, including networking and applying online. Applying online is important, and because it's a huge part of the process where, or it's a huge part of the process that companies need you to follow in order to start a file on you, make sure that you are in the hiring process itself, and so they can track you along on your applicant and candidate journey. So those are a few things that I really recommend.
Got it. And actually, as a follow-up, and I know we talk a lot about sort of how to get to a human on the inside of the recruiting process. So sort of, bypassing the traditional HR recruitment route would be to network and find maybe someone that you have a connection with, things like that. But obviously not everyone does that. So you mentioned, applying online. Can you tell us a little bit about, how that works, and is there anything people should know about that? Because a lot of people have anxiety about, submitting an application online and what happens to it afterward. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So once you submit an application online, then it would be going into the applicant tracking software, which I just want to set the precedent here that the applicant tracking software is almost like a project management software for recruiters and people in hiring. It helps them track your, like I said before, your hiring journey or your candidate and applicant journey along the way. It's not rejecting you. It's not doing anything really fancy and mystical. And then at that point, once you've applied, then a human reader is reading your resume and they're looking for a match. They're looking to make sure that you meet the qualifications of the job. And they're making sure that you could create solutions for the business needs for which that job posting has been posted. Because at the end of the day, a job is there to create solutions for something that the business is working on or needs help with.
Yeah, and that's what I think a lot of people, they always need to go into the mindset of you are helping them with a problem, and that's how you sort of sell yourself is, I have all these skills. It's not necessarily that you worked at all these companies and you deserve a job. It's that I have these skills and I could help you solve the problem that you have.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also thank you for making that point with the ATS, because it's obviously a complicated thing that people get anxious about, and I know I've probably
Yes.
mischaracterized sometimes with when I try to simplify the language, so I appreciate it.
No problem.
And looking at the stream, we have so many people joining us, and I see so many wonderful questions. I just want to say hi to Sunny in Canada. So you have a country person in there with you.
My neighbor.
Yeah, we have Hesham from Saudi Arabia, Amy in Indiana, Janet from Michigan, Mara from New Jersey, and I also saw someone in there from Montreal. So I assume you guys all know each other from
Yes, that's right. Yes,
your Canada meetings and things like that.
for sure. Yeah.
So I saw a really interesting question in the stream, and I wanted to kick off with that, and it's from German. And he asked, can I pay someone to get me interviews? And I guess the actual question would be like, can you outsource your job search?
It's my understanding that there's different regulations across different companies, or I'm sorry, countries, different regulations across different countries. And it's my understanding that in Canada, no, you cannot pay someone to job search on your behalf. I have seen some services like that in the US. I'm not sure how they're regulated. Would I recommend it? I'm not really sure, because no one understands you like you. And you don't want someone else kind of pegging you into jobs that maybe are a bad fit for you. So when it comes to job searching is your job to do. It's work that you need to do. It's a lot of work. No one's denying that. And it requires your commitment and energy investment and time investment. And so I think for the most successful job search possible, it's really important that you tackle it yourself. And yeah, those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer. And I know the one time I was at a gathering of recruiters and I was talking to someone and he had the experience where someone was doing a job searching for an applicant and, did the screener interview and did all of that. And then when it came time for the in-person interview, the real person showed up and, it was sort of an automatic no because, regardless of what he was saying and things like that, it was basically, you weren't the person I talked to in the first place, and that was for a recruiter for a tech company. So,
Wow.
I could feel, I could understand that's not going to go over well in most cases.
That I've not heard of that happening before. I didn't know that was a service, but yeah, I would avoid having someone impersonate you.
Yeah, no, I think that was a good tip. And speaking of job searching for yourself, we have a few people here, Dolores and Tony, asking about cold calling or cold emailing recruiters. So is that something that you would encourage, or is it something where like you should only do that if maybe you know someone in common? How does that work?
I think that it's fine to do, but we need to do it right. So the ideal scenario is that you would have applied to a job online that they already had available. So, or already was posted for, say, one of their clients or internally for one of their business partners. So there's that. Let's say that you're networking with them for potential future opportunities. Certainly you can do that, but what is really important is the content of the messages that you send. We want to avoid messages like, hey, I see you're a recruiter, I'm available to work. That's helpful to no one. So we really want to make sure that our messages to recruiters are very targeted. So it's important that you have a very clear understanding of who the recruiter recruits for in terms of their clients or their business partners and what types of jobs. So for example, if you're a new grad, you really want to avoid reaching out to just any recruiter on the planet, and you should really be focusing more so on university recruiting or recent graduate recruiting recruiters, so that you are being targeted in your connecting and in your networking. And then the message really needs to identify what job you are going after and how you can bring value and create solutions.
Definitely, and I think what you said about sort of understanding the recruiting process is important because especially I know I grew up in a very small town in northeastern Pennsylvania, and the recruitment and HR process that a lot of those smaller companies that are based in that area uses is much different than like a large company like where I work with at LinkedIn and Microsoft. It's night and day. So Microsoft and LinkedIn have an army of recruiters. They do very specialized recruiting. Some are dedicated to certain types of recruiting. So I think that is an incredible piece of advice for people to understand.
Thanks.
Yeah. And, we have people here actually, since you mentioned new grads, we have people here, people are gearing up for graduation in April and they're entering a rocky situation. Not like the poor souls who graduated last year. So
Right.
they really got the short end of the stick. But Noralie and Jeremy ask for new grads or people who are long-term unemployed, how do you shake up your resume to stand out? Because new grad, they are going out with not necessarily a ton of real world experience, and then for someone who's long term employed, it might have been a while since they had recent work experience.
Right. So for me, generally speaking, you would have two different strategies for these two different scenarios. So first, for recent grads, let's say you have no work experience whatsoever. What you really want to do is lean on the accomplishments and the learnings that you've acquired through school. So maybe you had a project, like a capstone project that was really real world, you want to highlight that type of work. Perhaps you actually take on some kind of self-directed projects to enhance your learning. That counts too as experience. I wouldn't call it work experience, but I'd call it experience. If you have volunteered, if you have been a leader on a club at school, let's say, you can include that as experience as well. So thinking of other ways that you have demonstrated strengths that are required or desired in your target role is where I would start, and just looking for other alternatives that aren't specifically paid work. So there's that. For folks that have been out of the workforce for a little bit of time, I actually went live last night and talked about and reviewed a few resumes for parents who had been out of the workforce for a little bit of time. First, we got to get really clear on the target job we're going after, and then we need to explain the gap and explain that we were off, say, raising kids or off for whatever reason. You know, we want to share some information, but we also want to honor our own confidentiality and privacy. So I have a ton of videos on my YouTube channel about addressing career gaps in any case. So there's those, but really what it comes down to for folks who have been out of the industry for a while is revisiting and emphasizing experience that you had that is relevant to where you're headed now, as well as we want to address like how we may have been keeping our skills fresh, whether that was through ongoing professional development or continuous learning, perhaps taking on a project, perhaps volunteering. So some similar ways of gaining experience for a recent grad would equate to keeping skills fresh as someone who's been out of the workforce for a while.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And you know, there's a lot of different things that someone with a long-term gap can do. And I think recruiters, hiring managers, they're now being more forgiving about that because so many people do have long-term gaps on their resume within the recent history. So I think, you know, that's important to remember, is that we're sort of in a new era.
For sure, new era, for sure.
And you know, keeping with the new grad theme, we have a question from Tony, and you know, about this being an employer's market. And Rick sort of echoes this question. And there's a lot of entry level positions. I'm air quoting, even though some people can't see me. Entry level positions that say require 3 years of experience. What do you suggest people who are job searching when they see that, especially new grads or people who are career switching? Is it a big red sign to say don't bother, or, you know, proceed with sort of a realistic expectation?
I would say, yeah, that's a tough one. And that really, the onus is really on employers for getting better at writing their job postings. Like there's so many stories about asking for experience in a technology that didn't exist 5 years ago, but they want 5 years experience. That doesn't make any sense. So in any case, I would say if you have the qualifications that they're looking for, then apply. But if you're missing the experience, it is like I've studied from or learned from a few recruiters that if they need a certain level or number of years of experience and you're a new grad, unfortunately they really can't consider you in many cases. So you need to go again through the university recruiting arm of a company to first get that true entry level role. Yeah, it's you. I mean, you could try and apply, but if you meet all the other qualifications and experience is the only one that's missing for you, know that that could actually be a showstopper for them. Like they may absolutely require those numbers of years of experience, and so just have realistic expectations, as you said, Andrew.
Yeah, it's sort of hope for the best, but also expect
Yeah.
the worst sometimes.
Yeah.
And also keep job searching until you get an offer.
Absolutely.
That's always the key.
Yeah, key for sure.
Yeah. And we have a question here too about job searching in the modern era, which is about attention in some ways, especially since everyone is online right now. And this user basically says they're shy by nature, and I don't even actually have a name for them. How can someone overcome that in today's social media age, especially in the world of hiring? So, how do you remain maybe the timid person but get through the process?
Yeah, so I don't think that there's any expectation in hiring that you need to be extroverted. I would just continue, like the fact that you have what sounds like good self-awareness is very, very important. I don't think that you need to absolutely put yourself out there. Rather, you need to make sure that you aren't underselling what you've accomplished when it comes to writing your resume and also writing your LinkedIn profile. And also in terms of social media activity, by no means do you need to become like a thought leader or, an inspirational speaker or anything like that. So what I would really do in that case is to lean on other people's content and interact with their content, because keeping the conversation going, even if it's not on your own stuff, is just as valuable. So offering thoughtful comments, asking thoughtful questions. You don't need to be out there all the time in big ways. Do what feels comfortable for you, but I would say do so consistently and don't undersell yourself.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, and especially if you know you're timid, you're probably not choosing a career where you're going to be, sports reporter
Right.
or something like that.
Yep.
So I think in a lot of ways you find your way because you know your personality, you know what you're good at, and you'll find your way through the process. So
For
as
sure.
a fantastic advice. And speaking of standing out, and this is something that has popped up obviously quite a bit during the pandemic, is virtual career fairs.
Mm.
And Lisa and Stephen want to know, how do you stand out in a virtual career fair or Zoom interview? How do you get that energy across? How do you get that sort of excitement? Because a lot of people, they might do a Zoom interview and sort of sit there, but what is your advice for them?
So, my advice is, well, there's a few things. So, first, we need to have an environment set up that we're comfortable in and that we're confident with. So, no piles of unfolded laundry behind us, no unmade beds, that kind of thing. So, we want to be confident with our environment. We want to be confident with the tech that we're using. So, a lot of the tech, especially Zoom, is probably one of the best examples, allows you to take it for a test drive before you actually need to use it live. So do a bit of a dress rehearsal, so to speak, and just have a Zoom call, let's say, with a friend or a family member, just to make sure that you're comfortable with navigating the tech. So we don't want to have to worry about use of tech on the actual day. And so we've got our environment, we've got our tech, and then it comes down to actually using the tech. And so when we are on camera, I'm failing to do it myself right now, but we want to look right at the camera, almost as though we're making eye contact with the person on the other side. It's easy for us to get distracted and look at ourselves like I was doing a few seconds ago, but we really want to look at the camera and like we're simulating actually being face to face with someone. And in doing so, that's going to actually facilitate quite a bit of a strong connection. And also, in terms of keeping the energy high, it's just, whatever you can do to amp yourself up before you go live is what I recommend, whatever that may be for you. And as you get eased into the conversation, I don't think you're going to struggle with keeping that energy high. It's just going to flow.
Yeah, and I want to echo the part about looking into the camera, because that's something, I have a communications degree and journalism degree, and that's something that, at the start of the pandemic, I think it was Sarah Johnston who gave me the tip of putting googly eyes next
Oh, that's
to
a good
my
idea.
camera. So I remembered to look in the eyes, and now I use a bigger camera, so I can't do that. But for a frame of reference, if you're not looking at the camera, you're going to be looking like this, and there's this weird disconnect.
Mhm.
It just doesn't look right. But if you look at the camera, it looks like you're talking to someone. And
Right.
so even in meetings that I have that are just in between colleagues, I will sometimes just look at the camera because I know it's creating a better connection. and they want to see my beautiful eyes. So, and speaking of interviews, we have a question here. Patrick asked it early on in the show about panel interviews. And do you have any strategies for a panel interview? Because obviously that's intimidating, and you're getting a lot thrown at you quickly. So what is your advice for that?
Panel interviews. I personally have experienced panel interviews myself, by video actually. So my recommendations for panel interviews would be to really focus on being present. So what does that mean? It means that you're not working hard to kind of anticipate the questions that might come at you, because when we do that, we're going to get distracted, and then when one panelist asks us one question and the next one comes from a different panelist, we're going to get confused, we're going to lose focus. So really, what you want to do is just be present, listen to the questions being asked, and then answer them directly. And if you need to take a moment before you answer a question, by all means, do that, so that you are coming across as thoughtful as possible. But I would just go through an interview question by question, person by person. And when you are starting the interview, it's difficult on video, but if you were in person, certainly you want to, and actually on video, you want to greet every person individually. That's really important. And again, just really focus on the person who's asking the question and answer that directly. I hope that helps.
Definitely.
Panel interviews are intimidating.
Yeah. I know. I think I've only had one in my life, and it was quite, you go in and you're just sort of tense, and you're trying to please everyone and read their personalities, and there's a lot going through your brain. So
there is.
And also, sorry for the buzzer earlier. That's how in New York City you learn that's how you learn you have a package. So I got mail. So yeah, and thank you everyone who's joining us. We have so many people in the stream. Rita from North Carolina, Bill in Alabama, Ben in Canada. So you got another person there.
Oh, my other neighbor. Yeah.
Yes, Wilson from Zambia and Rafi from the United Arab Emirates. So welcome all of you. And for the next question, Sally's asking, and this goes back to the resume and those filing systems that recruiters use, the use of keywords. How important are they? How do you figure out what you need to use, if you need to use them? What's your advice there?
Yeah, so keywords are important, but I think that they are often inflated in their importance on the internet. So from a searchability standpoint, keywords are helpful, but we don't need to stress out about keywords as much as we think we do. So if we are integrating keywords, we need to also make sure, and this is more important than the keywords themselves, is that we are writing our resume in such a way that indicates and demonstrates that we're qualified to do the job. So if we are claiming a keyword as a skill, we sure as heck better be backing that up with a real result, real accomplishment, in order to actually showcase, like, hey, I'm not only writing this skill because it's a keyword, I'm also showing you that I've actually demonstrated that skill. So keywords are important in terms of being searched once you're in an applicant tracking system for, say, future roles. They are important on LinkedIn, but from a resume and LinkedIn standpoint, what's most important is showing that you can do the job.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just about, I think, getting into a job, because you want to make sure that the job you're getting matches what you want to do and your experience. Otherwise, when you get to the other side, it's not going to be a good experience for anyone. Right. The company is going to say, what did we get into here? You're going to say, what did we get into here? So I think that's always a really good point, is to make sure you want to do the job and that you can do the job.
Right.
Yeah. And, for a last question, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit, you're such a great resume writer, about the length of the resume, because we have people who are obviously college graduates. They don't
Yep.
have a lot on their resume. They might have college experience, some internship. Then you have people who've maybe been in the game for, 40 years almost with a ton of different jobs. What is standard when it comes to resume size and length, and what should people do?
Great question. And it's a question that us resume writers debate constantly. So there is no magic number for resume page numbers or length. There are different rules of thumbs that different resume writers use, but the most important thing that job seekers need to keep in mind when they're writing their resumes is that a resume needs to be as long as it needs to be to tell the right stories in the right way. So I used to be a big stickler for resume page length, I admit it. But I realized I couldn't be when I had to write my first 4-page resume. And so actually it was 3 pages first, then 4 pages. So, and it had to happen. My general rule of thumb, though, if people are looking for guidelines, is for anyone with less than 5 years of work experience in their target profession, I do tend to aim for a 1-page resume. For anyone with more than 5 years of work experience, I do tend to aim for a 2-page resume. For people who are really experienced, more so in a leadership role, you are likely going to look at a 3-page resume. And if you're C-suite going for board, you're looking at probably a 4-page resume. But again, those are guidelines. Those are not rules. There are no rules around number of pages. I've never heard a recruiter say, well, it went on to 2 pages, so I stopped reading at 1. So they'll read the whole thing. So again, just use the number of pages you need to tell the right stories in the right way.
Definitely. I think that, yeah, I don't think any recruiter will sort of say, put the brakes on, we went to 2 pages. And actually, one just quick follow-up question that I wonder, because I remember someone asked me to look at the resume once, and their resume was like 1 page, but then it went over like 5 lines onto the next page.
Oof.
So there was like, 3/4 of the page was white space. So what do you do in those situations? Do you say, try to get it all on 1 page, or do you try and do the old college English essay trick where you bump up the font size? What's your suggestion there?
So that's so funny. Yeah, if you got to commit to your number of page lengths. If you're going for a 1-page resume, commit to 1 page. If you're going to a 2-page resume, commit to 2 pages. So I'm not sure if I would take the approach of getting extra wordy, but you could consider adding some additional sections. So for the resume you were looking at where it just went on to 2 pages, probably they would be able to get it onto 1 page, and there's a number of ways to get that to work, whether it's slightly trimming white space, checking your margins and not making sure they're not super wide, possibly dropping the font, but we don't want to go too low. So there's that. But if they wanted to go into 2 pages, they can start considering adding sections with testimonials or recommendations from previous people who they reported into or clients, wherever it makes sense. They can also consider adding more of their professional development. It really depends on what they're showing and what they haven't yet showed on the resume, and what they could potentially add. So, but there's a lot of ways you could do it. I just don't recommend getting wordier per se.
Yeah, because ultimately, when a human reads it, you want it to be visually appealing. It's not necessarily it needs to check every single box, but you want to have them look at it and go, "Oh, this is nice."
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Great. Well, and thank you so much for your time, Kamara. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope everyone was following at the bottom of the screen, because we've been flashing your LinkedIn profile, and you post so many wonderful videos. And, people out there, if you're ever looking for really detailed help with your resumes, she does great resume reviews, things like that. You're active on Clubhouse now. So you're giving a lot of advice for free, and that's really great. And that's what makes you a top voice.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Wonderful.
it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you all out there for joining us. And Don't worry, we constantly have these conversations, but coming up Monday, I want to let you know that we have a show featuring Tyler Perry. It won't be me talking, but my colleagues, and there might be other special guests there. So be sure to tune in. Tyler Perry will be talking about Conversations for Change in coordination with Black History Month. We're going to be celebrating, talking about sort of, his journey, how he got to where he is. So be sure to tune in for that. And then on Friday, we are back with Get Hired Live with Stephanie Heath, who is the founder of Soulwork and Six Figures. My producer should be dropping in a link to next week's show, and it'll also be at the top of the post that you're watching this video in right now. So be sure to RSVP for that and get your questions in now, and we'll be talking next week with Stephanie Heath. So thank you all for joining us. I hope you stay safe and healthy. Be sure to follow your local health recommendations. We're still in the middle of this pandemic, and you could only get hired. You could only be a good candidate if you're well enough and healthy enough to do so. So be sure to take care of yourself. And until next week, best of luck.